It's a Wednesday night on Mark Rogers TV, so you know what that means. We've got Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama here to talk up the Alabama Crimson Tide. We join you each and every Wednesday night right about 6:30 Eastern Time, so you can catch us live for the full conversation here on YouTube. Don't worry if you miss it. It all uploads right to my channel at Mark Rogers TV, or you can catch the audio version on iTunes or Podbean. Stephen, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, man. It's another tremendous Wednesday. Got some sun here, taken away from the rain in Alabama, but it's Mark Rogers TV time.
It certainly is, and I can attest to similar weather here in Connecticut. A lot of rain recently, but a nice, beautiful sunny day, and it looks like it's going to be that way the rest of the week, and that's what we enjoy and what we need here in June. Alabama, despite a couple defections this week, should be set for 2017 with no issues. But this first transfer could hurt a little bit along the defensive front. So O.J. Smith on big number 91 announces today that he is leaving the program, Stephen.
This hurts the rotation on that defensive front just a bit. O.J. Smith, who was a big-time recruit when he came as a freshman, suffered an injury, did not play his freshman season, but a guy that's got great size, 6'3", 6'4", about 315 pounds. He's got speed, either playing in a tackle position or in a defensive end position. Somebody that's got tremendous size, great hand technique, good footwork, understands what his role is or what his role was, I should say, on the team. And I go back to the 2015 Alabama group that won a national championship. That group had a 16 to 17 man rotation. You look at the starters, Jaron Reed, Nashawn Robinson, but you also had guys like Jonathan Allen and Denzel DeVal and DJ Petway, just a rotation of players to Shawn Hand, players left and right. Also, Deron Payne was on that group. So what made that 2015 unit so special was when 3 to 4 guys had to come out, Saban and Kirby Smart to put in 3 to 4 guys, fresh bodies, for no drop-off and much added production. With O.J. Smith gone, you have to look at some of these young guys you've recruited, Isaiah Buggs, Phil Mathis, Brian Ray, some of the 2017 guys, and also guys like your Johnny Dwights and other players that are back to really fill in that role of providing no drop-off on the rotation, because despite having Deron Payne and Deshaun Hand back on that defensive line, and both of those two guys are studs, they need help. And getting as much rotation, as many bodies as you can on that field, getting them experience, getting them reps in is highly important. But losing O.J. Smith on that line, somebody that was a veteran player coming into his redshirt junior year, that hurts.
Yes, it's Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama joining us each and every Wednesday night to talk Alabama football. O.J. Smith moving on, the Louisiana product, coming into his junior campaign here in 2017. Shawn Jennings, a redshirt freshman, looked to be scrapping his way to possibly get a little bit of playing time, maybe on special teams this fall, Stephen. But he also announced a few days ago his defection from the program. Give us a little insight into Shawn Jennings' decision and his predicament there at Alabama, despite the presence of his brother.
You look at Shawn Jennings coming in as a linebacker, the 3-star out of Dadeville, Alabama. Got a lot of potential, but Alabama recruits heavy in linebacker, Mark. You know this, I know this. From Saban's first arrival in Tuscaloosa in 2007, Saban recruits that linebacker position hard. When you talk with Orlando McClain and Eric Anders, C.J. Mosley, Dante Hightower, Courtney Upshaw, Reuben Foster, Reggie Ragland, the list goes on. Saban recruits linebackers, and they sign 5 to 6 linebackers per class. That's how much Saban goes after that position. And for Shawn Jennings, recruited at that position, just too much talent ahead of him and too much talent behind him that this team is high on for him to overcome. And great person, great talent out of Dadeville, Alabama. But when you have so many people ahead of you that have the experience and so many people behind you that they may not have the experience, but they have the like or the liking of the coaching staff, it's difficult. And you also bring up his brother, Anthony Jennings, that comes out of Dadeville, Alabama, also another 3-star. He's projected to have a monster year in the upcoming season. 19 tackles a year ago, a couple of those for loss, had 3 quarterback hurries. The A-Day game really looked good, putting pressure to Jalen Hurts. So Anthony Jennings, he's right now battling Christian Miller, Terrell Hall, Jamie Mosley also for a spot to start at that rush linebacker position in Alabama's base 3-4 defense. But he's projected to have a big-time year. So when your brother's positioned for greatness at Alabama and you're kind of scratching the surface with too much talent ahead of you and too much talent behind you, Shawn getting the short end of the stick there, and he's going to try to go somewhere where he can really, really play.
It's Alabama Talk here on Mark Rogers TV each and every Wednesday night with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. So check it out, touchdownalabama.net. You can join Stephen and the rest of the staff for in-depth coverage of Alabama athletics, not just football, but across the board. Stephen joins me every Wednesday night as we talk Alabama football. So you've got the complete conversation here live on YouTube at Mark Rogers TV. Also, it's uploaded if you want to catch the entire conversation, or we edit it down into individual segments if you just want to key in on one particular player, topic, or discussion for a quick 2 or 3 minute hit. We've got the entire broadcast also available on iTunes and Podbean for you Alabama football fans. So we talk nothing but Tide each and every week, but sometimes there's a story that comes across the landscape of college football that is just too big to ignore. Bob Stoops, regardless of his popularity or lack thereof in the SEC because of some of the comments that he's made in recent years to kind of stir the rivalry with the SEC. One of the landmark coaches in the recent history of college football has announced today that he is stepping down in Norman after 18 years at Oklahoma University. Stephen M., your thoughts about Bob Stoops and this very surprising decision that he's made?
I am saddened by it. Bob Stoops has been coaching Oklahoma for as long as I've been alive, and I've been living since 1993. Bob Stoops has been at Oklahoma since, I want to say, 1998, 99. So for 18 years, you don't see coaches in the game that long anymore. Of course, we had the great Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech for 30-plus years. But when you look at Bob Stoops, what he brought to that program, the character, the heart, of course, a national championship in 2000 with a quarterback by the name of Josh Heupel, great individual on that side. Bob Stoops produced a bionic running back in Adrian Peterson, a Heisman winner in Jason White. Just the accolades continue to grow, and he's one of few coaches behind Saban that stand high in top 10 and 10-plus win seasons, winning percentage. When it comes down to the numbers for coaches that win, how consistent they are in winning, how consistent they are and getting their teams to bowl games, Bob Stoops is right there. And it's hurt. It's a hurting thing. It's saddening. You and I mentioned off the air, Mark, about him just bringing in his best recruiting class he's had in the last 8 or 9 years or so, and also him convincing Baker Mayfield, who had a heck of a season last year. He's coming back, for his senior year, and Mayfield has a chance to possibly win the Heisman Trophy. You didn't want to see it happening this way. Of course, all the Joe Mixon at running back, the stuff that he went through with the domestic violence thing coming down and all the external factors outside. But as far as coaching is concerned, Bob Stoops, one of my favorite coaches. When you talk about guys wearing the visor, you lose Steve Spurrier, and now you lose Bob Stoops. It's a very testing time. But Lincoln Riley, who's been the coach in waiting for a while at Oklahoma, inherits a very good team, and he's done a great job himself in recruiting and getting the best play out of the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs at the soonest I've brought in. I expect nothing but greatness from Lincoln Riley to carry the program forward. But with Stoops stepping down, this comes as a huge shock.
Yeah, so Bob Stoops has had to endure much criticism for losing big games. And much of that criticism is deserved because he makes a ton of money, as do the elite coaches in college football, $5, $6, $7 million per year. So that goes along with the gig. However, Bob Stoops has been unduly criticized for losing big games. You need to look at the entirety of the record. And I think in this era of first the BCS and now the college football playoff, too much emphasis has been placed on reaching that final two or that final four and then going on and winning the national championship. Yes, we here in America value winning it all and being number one, and number two doesn't count. It's an extremely competitive sport. You've got 128 FBS teams. You've got roughly 65 teams playing Power 5 college football. You have dominant programs like Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, USC, elsewhere. It is difficult to finish as the one lone man, one lone team standing. Bob Stoops, as you mentioned, Stephen, was able to do that in his second season at Oklahoma in 2000. Actually, he was first the head coach at Oklahoma, and I was covering Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama there in the state of Mississippi, and covered the bowl game against Ole Miss. His first postseason experience as a head coach there at Oklahoma against David Cutcliffe at the time. So he's moved on since then, and I think it gets disregarded because, again, the attention's on the playoff. It's on the BCS when we were experiencing that era. And his conference domination has been ignored on the national landscape. He dominated the Big 12. Now, the Big 12 right now and over the past couple of years has most likely been the worst conference out of the Power 5, but that hasn't always been the case. Texas was Texas up until about 2010 or 11. Some other programs, Oklahoma State has been extremely competitive under Mike Gundy, going to BCS games on a fairly regular basis. And some other programs have been extremely strong, including Kansas State in the Big 12 and the emergence of TCU. He has dominated that conference repeatedly, 10 conference championships during his time there. He took a program that was run-oriented, an offense that was run-oriented and kind of slipping a bit before his emergence, and revolutionizing the passing game at Oklahoma with the likes of Sam Bradford. And before that, you mentioned Josh Heupel, of course, Jason White winning a Heisman Trophy in 2003 as well. Yes, a couple embarrassments, and I think this has been the case at a few other schools, have been magnified and completely blown out of proportion. The USC loss, the LSU loss in the Sugar Bowl that would have won 2 other national championships for Bob Stoops during his first few seasons have been blown out of proportion. But if you overall look at the record of getting to 11 or 12 BCS games or major bowl games, and just the dominance within the conference and running a clean program, yes, you're going to have kids run amok. And he gained some criticism in his handling of Joe Mixon. But before that video ever hit public consumption, that's when the hammer came down from the public scrutiny, was once we saw the video. But Bob Stoops had already dealt with that. He already suspended Joe Mixon for an entire football season, completely kicked off the team, void of any football activity. So he had dealt with that problem. So despite what any one of us felt about the severity of the punishment, Bob Stoops already dealt with it, and it was just the shock of seeing the video that brought a lot of other media criticism and public scrutiny into play. So, Stephen, any other thoughts about Bob Stoops?
I'm going to miss seeing him. I'm going to definitely miss seeing him out there coaching. I'm going to definitely miss seeing that face, in the Big 12. Because as you mentioned, Mark, he dominated the Big 12, whether, despite the years Kansas State was good, the years Texas was good prior to, losing Colt McCoy and Vince Young. And if you look at Missouri, when Missouri was good under Gary Pinkel and a quarterback by the name of Chase Daniel, Oklahoma was running the Big 12. So I'm going to miss Bob Stoops. As I mentioned, he's left the program in good hands. Lincoln Riley, a young coach, he's going to know what to do. The guys have already rallied around him. They've shown him much respect, much love. But I'm going to miss Bob Stoops.
Yeah, and it was always interesting to hear what Bob Stoops might say, as he was a bit irritated by the dominance of the SEC, both the reality of the dominance of the SEC, but also the reported dominance, and when he thought that was a little bit overplayed. by the national media. Bob Stoops would chime in, and he was very successful during his final few outings against the SEC. Of course, the 2014 Sugar Bowl surprise upset of the Crimson Tide. And, of course, a couple dates against Tennessee, home and home recently. And then his final contest of his career, as it turns out to be, coming against the Auburn Tigers and winning that game going away in the second half.
He definitely showed up against Alabama. I give that to him. He had Trevor Knight ready to play, and I remember that game. Trevor Knight went 32 of 44 for over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. He carved this up. So Bob Stoops definitely had Trevor Knight ready to play.
So we'd like everyone to know that at 7:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Central, after Bob Stoops' news conference, in which we may gain a little bit more insight into the surprise decision that he's made, because as Stephen mentioned, after dominating the Big 12 and being a huge favorite to win the conference and have that almost certain path to the college football playoff this year, coming off his best recruiting class as well in the last 7 or 8 years, a surprise decision by Bob Stoops, and we may get a little bit more insight in the next few minutes on that decision. I'm going to be joined by Graham Dudley from Crimson and Cream Machine, the SB Nation platform for Oklahoma athletics, to discuss the announcement of Bob Stoops stepping down at Oklahoma University. All right, Stephen, it's always a good time. We appreciate it. We will catch you next week. Always want to let everyone know that we're talking Alabama football here each and every Wednesday night.
No problem, Mark. Hey, thank you.